You're never good for anything, Leo. The words left my fiancé Colton's mouth, and my heart shattered like glass hitting concrete. We were planning his company's charity event, a massive gala where high-profile guests would attend, and I just wanted everything to be perfect. But to Colton, my efforts were always too soft, always boring, always worthless. Colton, I was just thinking if we made the floral arrangements a bit more elegant. Floral arrangements? He cut me off, that familiar exhausted anger flashing in his eyes. Leo, this is a charity gala, not a garden party. Do you even realize how bland your decisions are? My breath caught. Bland. That word echoed in my mind as I gripped my clipboard tighter. This wasn't the first time Colton had put me down. In 3 years of our relationship, it had become almost routine. But each time hurt differently, cutting a little deeper. All right, I said quietly, keeping my voice steady. I'll review everything again and make changes. He turned away from me, immediately absorbed in his phone as if I'd ceased to exist. And I stood there, feeling like nothing more than an assistant, not his partner, not the person he'd proposed to 3 years ago. The night of the event finally arrived. The entire hall glittered under crystal chandeliers, expensive cuisine was elegantly served, and the scent of designer suits and costly perfumes filled the air. Everything was perfect. I stood in my usual corner, clipboard in hand, checking the guest list and arrangements like always. Colton was on stage smiling for cameras, shaking hands with influential people, playing the role of the world's most noble and successful man. That's when I glanced toward the grand entrance and my breath stopped completely. A man entered. And the moment he did, the entire room's energy shifted. Tall, incredibly tall. Broad shoulders that filled out his tailored black suit perfectly. Sharp jawline and dark hair styled with precision. His suit fit so flawlessly it looked like he'd walked straight off a runway. But he wasn't about soft looks or sweet smiles. His entire aura radiated danger and command, as if wherever he went he took control. Every eye in the room turned to him. Who is that? A guest standing near me whispered to their companion. Jackson Cade. Someone else answered with a mixture of surprise and respect. Billionaire boxer. Started in underground rings with nothing. Now owns Fortune 500 companies. Extremely powerful and ruthless businessman. My heart began racing. Jackson Cade. I'd heard his name in business magazines, seen him on the news, but seeing him in real life, seeing him this close, was entirely different. And then, as if pulled by some magnetic force, his gaze landed directly on me. I froze. His gray eyes were so intense, so penetrating, that I couldn't move from my spot. My hand tightened on the clipboard. He began walking toward me, slow, deliberate, confident, as if everyone else in that room had disappeared and only the two of us remained. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. I wanted to step back, but my feet were rooted to the floor. When he stood directly in front of me, he scanned me from head to toe. But it wasn't a creepy look. It was an assessing gaze, as if he were reading me. What's your name? He asked, his voice deep and controlled, yet carrying an unexpected warmth. Leo, I stammered, my voice barely audible. He smiled slightly, but it wasn't a generic sweet smile. This was a knowing smile, as if he understood something no one else did, as if he'd read my entire story in a single glance. Leo, he repeated, as if tasting the name, feeling it. Why are you standing alone in the corner? The event is so grand, you should be enjoying it too. My mouth opened, but no words came out. What would I say? That I wasn't here to enjoy but to work. That my fiancé didn't even consider me a guest? Jackson noticed my hesitation and he extended his hand. He placed it lightly on my shoulder, protective, possessive, yet gentle. His touch sent a current racing through my entire body. Next time someone ignores you, he said softly. His gaze locked into mine, his voice carrying a promise. Tell me. I'll personally handle it. Fire rushed through my veins. My face grew warm, and I had no idea how to respond. Jackson gave me one last look, a look filled with intensity, concern, and something I couldn't quite understand, and then he moved on toward the other guests. But I remained standing there, still feeling his touch, replaying his words, and in that moment I knew my life would never be the same again. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I went through the motions mechanically, checking lists, coordinating with caterers, ensuring everything ran smoothly. But my mind kept drifting back to those gray eyes, that commanding presence, those words that seemed to see right through me. When the event finally ended and the last guest departed, Colton was in an exceptionally good mood. Several investors had shown interest in his projects, and he'd networked successfully with some influential figures. He was on his phone the entire ride home, texting and making plans, while I sat beside him in silence. "You did an acceptable job tonight," he said without looking up from his screen. "Though you could have been more proactive about introducing me to key guests." An acceptable job. After weeks of planning, after countless sleepless nights perfecting every detail, that was all I got. I didn't respond. I'd learned that silence was often the safest option. Back at our apartment, Colton went straight to his study for a late-night conference call. I stood in our bedroom, loosening my tie, staring at my reflection in the mirror. When had I become this person? When had I stopped recognizing myself? I pulled out my phone and, without really thinking about it, searched for Jackson Cade online. Articles populated my screen. His rise from underground boxing to legitimate business empire. His reputation for being ruthless yet fair. His philanthropic work that he never publicized. He was 34, unmarried, intensely private about his personal life. I closed the browser quickly, feeling guilty. What was I doing? I was engaged. I was committed. I shouldn't be thinking about another man, especially not someone I'd just met. Someone who'd simply shown me a moment of kindness. But as I lay in bed that night, Colton still busy in his study, I couldn't shake the memory of how Jackson had looked at me. Not through me, not past me, but actually at me. As if I mattered. As if I were visible. And for the first time in 3 years, I allowed myself to wonder if this was really what love was supposed to feel like. This constant diminishment, this endless feeling of never being quite enough. The thought terrified me, because deep down I already knew the answer. Even after Jackson left, his voice echoed in my ears. His words, his touch, those gray eyes. Everything circled through my mind relentlessly. "Next time someone ignores you, tell me." I kept staring at my hands, where he'd touched my shoulder, my heart still racing. What was this feeling? I was confused, restless. I was with Colton. We were engaged. We'd been together for 3 years. So why this confusion? Why this rapid heartbeat? "Leo." Colton's sharp voice jolted me from my thoughts. I turned to face him, and there was his signature annoyed expression, jaw tight, eyes narrowed. "Did you properly check the guest list? An investor just told me Jackson Cade was there, and you didn't even inform me. Do you have any idea what a massive opportunity we missed?" I was busy with the arrangements," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Everything was running smoothly, so I thought. Colton rolled his eyes, frustration radiating from him. "What exactly is your job then, Leo? Do you realize how important that guest was? If I'd personally met him, networked with him, our company could have secured a deal today. But no, you're only concerned with your little arrangements." My jaw tightened. I clenched my fists. "Colton, I tried to tell you, but you were busy on stage." "Trying isn't enough, Leo," he snapped, checking his phone as if this conversation was wasting his time. "You need results. But you're always stuck on small tasks. You need to see the bigger picture." My chest felt heavy. I said nothing because I knew if I spoke we'd have a major fight. And after fights, Colton wouldn't speak to me for hours, sometimes days. He'd give me the silent treatment, which was even harder to handle. So, as always, I kept quiet and watched him walk away. The next day, I found myself at my favorite cafe, a small, cozy place downtown, where I'd go whenever Colton's criticisms became too much. This was my safe space. I ordered my usual coffee and sat at a corner table, checking emails on my phone. Colton had sent another passive-aggressive text that morning about yesterday, which I was actively ignoring. "Mind if I sit here?" My hand froze on the coffee cup. That voice, deep, controlled, unforgettable. I looked up and Jackson Cade stood before me, dressed in a casual black shirt and jeans. Yet his presence remained just as commanding. "J. Jackson," I stood up so quickly and nervously that I spilled some coffee on the table. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." He gave a soft chuckle, the first time I'd seen him so relaxed. The smile was genuine. "Relax, Leo," he said, sitting down across from me. "I'm not here to frighten you, and don't worry about the coffee, it happens. But my breathing was still rapid, my heart racing. He sat with such confidence as if this cafe belonged to him. Every movement, every gesture carried that same self-assurance. "What? Why are you here?" I asked, my voice nervous and confused. "I mean, this is such a simple cafe and to find you," he answered directly, without hesitation, his gray eyes just as intense as they'd been last night. My heart stopped. "Me? But why? You don't even know me." Jackson leaned forward slightly, his presence so overwhelming I felt like I might suffocate. Yet somehow it wasn't suffocating. It was magnetic. Because last night, when I saw you, your eyes held everything people work so hard to hide. He paused, measuring his words carefully. Pain, loneliness, exhaustion, and constantly sacrificing yourself for someone else, putting your own happiness last. My throat went dry. How could he see everything I'd been trying to hide for months with just one look? "I'm fine," I said quickly, lowering my gaze, unnecessarily adjusting my coffee cup. "Everything's fine with me." "No, you're not," Jackson said, with such certainty, such confidence, that I felt he couldn't possibly be lying. "And the person treating you like you're invisible, like your feelings don't matter, he doesn't deserve you. He doesn't know your worth." My hands trembled. He was talking directly about Colton without even knowing the full story. "You're talking about Colton?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Yes. I do research when I'm interested in someone," Jackson said honestly. "And I came here to tell you you deserve so much more than him, Leo. Your softness isn't your weakness. It's your strength. And anyone who can't see that isn't worthy of you." Jackson placed a sleek black business card on the table and slid it toward me. His fingers came very close to my hand, but he didn't touch, as if respecting my boundaries. "When you discover the truth, when you're ready to stand up for yourself," he said, standing up, "call me. I'll always be available." And he left, leaving me alone with my questions, my racing heart and that black card that now felt incredibly heavy in my hand. I looked at the card, embossed letters, expensive cardstock, just a name and number. Simple yet powerful, just like Jackson. I sat there for another hour, nursing my cold coffee, staring at that card. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to pretend this encounter never happened. The rational part of my brain screamed that I was engaged, that I shouldn't be entertaining thoughts about another man. But another part, a part I'd been suppressing for so long, whispered that maybe, just maybe, I deserved to feel the way Jackson made me feel in those brief moments. Seen, valued, important. My phone buzzed. A text from Colton. "Dinner meeting tonight. Don't wait up." No please. No sorry for the inconvenience. Just a flat statement. An order. This was my life now, waiting in the wings while Colton lived his, being grateful for whatever scraps of attention he threw my way. I carefully placed Jackson's card in my wallet, tucked it away in the hidden pocket. I told myself I'd never use it, that it was just there, that keeping it meant nothing. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself, because something had shifted inside me. The small crack in the armor I'd built around my heart. A tiny voice asking questions I'd been too afraid to ask for 3 years. Was this really love? Was this really what I deserved? I left the cafe without answers, but carrying questions that would change everything. Jackson's card felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket, constantly reminding me of its presence. Yeah. I'd been looking at that card for 5 days now. His name, his number, those embossed letters that looked expensive and untouchable. Every time Colton criticized me, every time he ignored me while absorbed in his phone, I'd touch that card, but I couldn't make the call. Because I was engaged to Colton. Because I'd always been loyal. Because I didn't want to break my commitment, no matter how much it hurt. It wouldn't be right. I kept telling myself, "Leo, where's your head at?" Colton's voice dragged me back to reality. We were having dinner at an upscale Italian restaurant. Well, technically he was eating while continuously typing emails on his phone. I simply sat across from him like a mannequin, like a piece of furniture. "Nothing," I said, forcing a smile that had become automatic by now. "Good. By the way, I should mention a new assistant started at my office a few days ago. Lara. Very smart, efficient, and actually useful. I'll introduce you sometime." He said this so casually as if it were some sort of compliment. My hand tightened on my fork. He was indirectly comparing me like he always did. Useful. as if I wasn't useful. That's good, I said softly, fixing my eyes on my plate. Good for the company. Colton put his phone down and looked at me, brows furrowed as if curious. Doesn't it make you jealous? I'm praising someone else right in front of you. Why should it? I asked. Genuinely confused, my voice flat. He laughed, a cold, mocking laugh that echoed through the restaurant. Exactly. Because even you know how bland you are, how predictable you are, how easy it would be to replace you. Anyone could do what you do. Something inside me broke, completely shattered. I placed my napkin on the table slowly, in what felt like slow motion, and pulled my chair back. Silent and deliberate, Colton's smile remained, as if he'd made a casual joke, as if his words meant nothing. I'm going to the restroom, I said, my voice dangerously flat, and I walked away, desperately trying to hold back tears, somehow trying to maintain my dignity. Standing in front of the restroom mirror, I saw my reflection, dark circles that concealer couldn't hide, tired eyes with no spark, a forced smile that had become permanently set on my face. Who was this? Who had I become? Where had the Leo gone who used to be happy, who used to dream? My hand automatically went to my pocket, and I pulled out Jackson's card. When you discover the truth, call me. My thumb hovered over his number. It would be so simple, just one call. But would it be right? No. I can't do this. I love Colton. Or did I? Do I still? Really? I put the card back in my pocket and composed myself. I walked out, heading back to the main restaurant area. But when I approached our table, I saw Colton wasn't alone. A young woman sat across from him, attractive, professionally dressed, confident body language. Lara. This had to be Lara. They were laughing. Colton, who never laughed that freely with me, who only gave my jokes polite smiles. His eyes held a sparkle I hadn't seen in months. And then Lara lightly touched Colton's hand while saying something, and they both laughed again. My heart plummeted, completely crashed. Colton said nothing. He didn't pull his hand away. He just kept smiling, engaged in the conversation. I turned back and left the restaurant without a word, without confrontation. I went straight to the parking lot and sat in my car. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. I stared at it for several seconds, fighting with myself, but then I remembered Colton's laugh. The laugh that was never for me. I called Jackson's number. Ring. Ring. Each ring matched my heartbeat. Leo. Hearing his voice made my breath catch. He said my name with such familiarity, as if he already knew I'd call. Jackson. My voice cracked. I need to see you. Please. Right now. A pause. But not judgmental, understanding. Send me your address, I'll be there in 15 minutes. I sent him my location, a nearby parking lot, where I'd pulled over, unable to drive home, unable to face Colton's empty apartment. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. 12 minutes later, I saw headlights approach. A sleek black car pulled up beside mine, and Jackson stepped out. Even in the dim parking lot lighting, even in casual clothes, his presence was overwhelming. He walked to my car window and I rolled it down. Get in my car, he said gently but firmly. You shouldn't be alone right now. I nodded, unable to speak, and moved to his vehicle. The interior was luxurious, leather seats, that new car smell, everything pristine. But what struck me most was how safe I felt the moment I closed the door. Jackson didn't start driving. He just turned to face me, his gray eyes full of concern. Tell me what happened. And everything poured out. The restaurant, Lara, Colton's laugh that I'd never heard directed at me, the way he'd let her touch him, the way he'd looked at her. Words tumbled from my mouth in a broken stream, and Jackson listened to every single one without interrupting. When I finally stopped, exhausted and emotionally drained, Jackson reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. I need to show you something, he said carefully. But I want you to know, I'm not showing you this to hurt you. I'm showing you because you deserve to know the truth. He pulled up a folder of photos, time-stamped clear images. Colton and Lara entering a hotel together after the restaurant. Another photo of them in an elevator, her hand on his arm. A third showing them entering a hotel room. The world tilted. He's been seeing her for 2 weeks, Jackson said quietly. I had someone investigating after our cafe meeting because something felt wrong. I'm sorry, Leo. I'm so sorry. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. 3 years. 3 years. of making myself smaller, of accepting criticism, of believing I wasn't good enough. And he'd been cheating. Why? I whispered. Why would you investigate? Why would you care? Jackson's hand came up to my face, cupping my cheek gently. Because from the moment I saw you, I knew. You weren't supposed to be his. You were supposed to be mine. And I know that sounds insane. We barely know each other. But I've built an empire on trusting my instincts, Leo. And every instinct I have is screaming that you're meant to be in my life. Tears streamed down my face, not just for Colton's betrayal, but for the 3 years I'd lost, for the person I'd stopped being. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice breaking. You don't have to decide anything tonight, Jackson said softly. But know this, whatever you choose, wherever you go from here, I'm here. You're not alone anymore. And for the first time in years, I believed someone. I spent that entire night in Jackson's car, parked outside a quiet overlook where the city lights twinkled below us. We didn't talk much after he showed me those photos. He just let me process, let me cry, let me break down without judgment. When dawn started breaking over the horizon, he finally drove me home. Take the day, he said as I got out of his car. Process everything, then decide what comes next. But I already knew what came next. I walked into the apartment I shared with Colton around 7 in the morning. He was in the kitchen, dressed in his running clothes, making his protein shake like it was any other morning. He barely glanced at me. Out all night, he asked casually, not even bothering to sound concerned. I figured you stayed at a hotel or something after your dramatic exit. We need to talk, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. Can it wait? I have a conference call at 8:30. He checked his expensive watch, the one I'd saved for months to buy him last Christmas. No, it can't wait. Something in my tone made him finally look at me. Really look at me. Maybe he saw something different in my eyes. Something that hadn't been there before. I know about Lara, I said simply. I know you've been sleeping with her. The protein shaker slipped from his hand, clattering into the sink. His face went through several expressions. Shock, then calculation, then defiance. That's ridiculous. Who told you that? Does it matter? I walked to our bedroom and pulled out the suitcase from the closet. I'm leaving. Leo, wait. He followed me, watching as I started throwing clothes into the bag. Look, if you saw us at dinner, that was just work. We were discussing the Henderson accounts. Save it. I didn't even pause in my packing. I saw the hotel photos. I know the truth. His expression hardened. You had me followed? That's insane, Leo. That's controlling and toxic. Don't. I spun to face him, and he actually stepped back at whatever he saw in my expression. Don't you dare try to flip this on me. You cheated. You lied. And honestly, I don't even care anymore. You don't care? He laughed bitterly. Of course you don't. Because you're too soft to actually feel anything real. You're too weak to fight for this relationship. No, I said quietly, sipping up my suitcase. I'm strong enough to walk away from someone who never valued me. I pulled off the engagement ring, that symbol of a future that was never going to happen, and placed it on the dresser. Colton stared at it like he couldn't quite process what was happening. This is about that boxer, isn't it? He said suddenly. Jackson Cade. I saw how you looked at him at the gala. You're leaving me for him. I'm leaving you for me, I corrected. Jackson just helped me see what I deserve. And what's that? Someone who'll get bored of you in a month? Leo, be realistic. You need someone like me. Someone stable. Someone who understands your limitations. Goodbye, Colton. I walked out with my suitcase, leaving him standing in our bedroom, still talking. I didn't hear what he said. I didn't want to. By the time I reached the building's lobby, my hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down on a bench. The reality of what I'd just done crashed over me. 3 years. 3 years ended in a 10-minute conversation. My phone buzzed. A text from Jackson. However you're feeling right now, it's valid. You're allowed to grieve even bad relationships. Text me when you're ready to talk. How did he know? But then again, Jackson seemed to know a lot of things without being told. I found myself typing, I left him. I don't have anywhere to go. His response was immediate. You have somewhere. My address is attached. The doorman knows you're coming. I stared at the message. This was moving so fast. Too fast. I barely knew Jackson. What if Colton was right? What if this was a mistake? But then I thought about last night in Jackson's car. The way he'd held me while I cried. The way he'd been patient, giving me space to feel everything without trying to fix it or minimize it. The way he'd looked at me like I mattered. When had Colton ever done that? I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the address Jackson had sent. His building was in the most expensive part of the city, all glass and steel and modern architecture. The doorman did indeed know my name and escorted me to a private elevator that required a key card. When the doors opened directly into Jackson's penthouse, I felt like I'd stepped into a different world. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the entire city. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive, all clean lines and quality materials. Everything was immaculate, organized, perfect, and standing by those windows, looking out at the view, was Jackson. He turned when he heard the elevator, and something in his expression softened when he saw me standing there with my single suitcase, probably looking as lost as I felt. "You came," he said, and there was relief in his voice. I didn't know where else to go. The admission felt vulnerable, scary. "This is exactly where you should be." He crossed the space between us, taking my suitcase and setting it aside. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel numb, relieved, terrified, all at once." "That's normal." He gestured toward the couch. "Sit. Have you eaten?" I shook my head. Now that he mentioned it, I couldn't remember my last meal. "I'll make something." He headed toward the open kitchen, all marble countertops and high-end appliances. "And before you ask, yes, I can actually cook. I didn't survive my early years eating takeout." I sat on his couch, which was somehow both stylish and comfortable, and watched him move around the kitchen. There was something surreal about this, about watching this powerful, dangerous man make me breakfast in his pristine penthouse after I'd just blown up my entire life. "Why are you doing this?" I asked suddenly. "Really? We barely know each other." Jackson paused in cracking eggs into a bowl. "Do you want the logical answer or the honest one?" "Both." Logically, I saw someone in a bad situation who needed help. I have the resources to provide that help, so I did. He resumed cooking, his movements efficient and practiced. "Honestly, from the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. I can't explain it better than that. I've spent my whole life trusting my instincts in the ring, in business, in life. And my instincts are telling me that you're important, that you're supposed to be here." "That's insane," I whispered. "Maybe." He plated the eggs with some toast and brought everything over, sitting beside me. "But I built a fortune on being insane, on trusting things that don't make logical sense." I took a bite of the food and it was perfect. Not too fancy, just good, simple comfort food. Exactly what I needed. "What if I can't give you what you want?" I asked quietly. "What if Colton was right, and I'm just too soft, too boring?" "Leo." Jackson set down his fork and turned to face me fully. "I don't want you to change. I don't want you to be harder or more exciting or anything other than exactly who you are. Your gentleness isn't a flaw. It's rare. It's precious. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you." Tears pricked my eyes again. "I'm a mess right now." "Then be a mess here," he said simply. "Take all the time you need. This is a safe space." And looking into his gray eyes, seeing nothing but genuine care and patience, I believed him. I stayed in Jackson's guest room for 3 days before I could face the world again. He gave me space, never pushing, but always there when I needed to talk. On the 4th morning, I woke up with clarity I hadn't felt in years. I needed to officially end things with Colton. Properly this time. I borrowed one of Jackson's cars, a sleek silver sedan that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years, and drove to Colton's office building. The receptionist recognized me and waved me through, probably not yet aware that I was now the ex-fiancé. Colton's office door was open. He was on the phone, laughing at something, and when he saw me, his expression immediately closed off. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone and hung up. "What are you doing here, Leo?" "I came to make sure we're clear." I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. "It's over. Completely. I'm not coming back." "I know." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You look different." "I feel different." "So you're really with him? The boxer?" There was no anger in his voice now, just curiosity. "That's none of your business anymore." Colton nodded slowly. "You're right. It's not." He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. "I had my lawyer draw these up, division of assets, formally ending the engagement. I kept it simple since we weren't married yet." I took the folder, surprised he'd been so efficient. "Thank you, for what it's worth," he said, and for once he sounded genuine. "I'm sorry. Not for cheating. I think we both know this relationship was dying long before Laura. But I'm sorry for how I treated you. The constant criticism, making you feel small, that wasn't fair." It was probably the closest thing to accountability I'd ever get from him. And honestly, it was enough. "I forgive you," I said and meant it. "But I don't want to see you again." "Fair enough." He gestured to the papers. "Sign those, have them sent back, and we're done." I left his office feeling lighter than I had in months. One chapter closed. Officially. When I returned to Jackson's penthouse, he was in his home office on a video call. He saw me and held up one finger. 5 minutes. I nodded and went to the kitchen to make tea. I'd learned over the past few days that Jackson's life was carefully structured. He worked out every morning at 5, had his first meeting at 7, worked until noon, then spent afternoons either at his fez businesses or training at his private gym. But somehow, he always made time when I needed to talk, always seemed to know when I needed company versus when I needed solitude. "How did it go?" he asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway. "Good. Clean. Final." I poured him a cup of tea without asking. I'd learned he took it black with 1 sugar. He apologized. "Actually, that's more than most people get." Jackson accepted the tea with a small smile. "How do you feel?" "Free," I said, surprising myself with how true it was. "Scared, but free." Fear and freedom often come together. He leaned against the counter, watching me with those penetrating gray eyes. "What do you want to do with that freedom?" "I don't know yet." I'd been so focused on surviving the end of my relationship that I hadn't thought about what came next. "I need to find an apartment, get a job." "Stay here," Jackson interrupted. "Not as a guest. Stay here with me." My heart stuttered. "Jackson, we've only known each other a week, and in that week I've been more certain about you than I've been about anything in my life." He set down his tea and stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to make any promises. I'm not asking you to commit to anything you're not ready for. I'm just asking you to stay. Give us a real chance." "What if it doesn't work?" I whispered. "What if we're terrible together? Then we'll figure that out together." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheek. "But I don't think we will be. I think we're going to be extraordinary." The certainty in his voice, the absolute confidence. It should have been arrogant. Instead, it was reassuring. "Okay," I breathed. "I'll stay." The smile that broke across his face was brilliant, transforming his usually serious expression into something younger, lighter. Yeah. I found myself smiling back. "But I want to contribute. I don't want to just live off you." "Your event planning business," he said immediately. "You mentioned wanting to start one. Let's make it happen. I'll provide startup capital, you provide the vision and work. 50-50 partnership." "That's too generous." "It's fair," he corrected. "I invest in good ideas and you have good ideas, Leo." Colton was too blind to see it, but I'm not. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it and grimaced. "I have to take this business emergency. But we'll talk more tonight." "Yes." I nodded and he pressed a quick kiss to my forehead before disappearing back into his office. A kiss. Casual, affectionate, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My hand drifted to where his lips had touched and I felt warmth spread through my chest. This was real. This was actually happening. That evening, Jackson ordered dinner from some exclusive restaurant, the kind that doesn't deliver unless you're a regular with significant influence. We ate at his dining table, talking about everything and nothing. He asked about my favorite books, my childhood, my dreams for this event planning business. He listened like every word mattered, asking thoughtful questions, remembering details. "Can I ask you something personal?" I ventured as we finished dessert. "Always. Why are you single?" "I mean, you're successful, attractive, clearly have a lot to offer. What's the catch?" He laughed. A real laugh that I was starting to treasure because it was so rare. "No catch. Just prioritized wrong things for a long time. Built an empire, forgot to build a life. And I met anyone who made me want to slow down and actually live." He met my eyes across the table. "Until you—" "That's a lot of pressure," I said, only half joking. "It doesn't have to be." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "We'll figure this out as we go. No pressure. No expectations. Just us. Seeing where this leads." His hand was warm, strong, steady. Everything I hadn't realized I needed. Just us. I echoed, squeezing his hand. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt hopeful about the future. 4 months later, my life was unrecognizable in the best possible way. My event planning business had launched successfully, with Jackson's connections helping me land several high-profile clients. But he never interfered with my decisions, never tried to take over. He was a silent partner in the truest sense, providing resources and advice when asked, but always respecting that this was my vision, my work. Living with Jackson had been an adjustment, but a surprisingly smooth one. We'd fallen into a comfortable rhythm, mornings spent in companionable silence over coffee, evenings debating everything from politics to philosophy. He'd introduced me to a small circle of trusted friends, all of whom had welcomed me without question. I'd started training with him sometimes, learning basic boxing technique, discovering a strength in myself I'd never known existed. And we were happy, genuinely, deeply happy, which made tonight's charity gala both exciting and nerve-wracking. It was being held at the same venue where we'd first met, and we'd be attending as an official couple, public, out in the open. No more hiding. "You look incredible," Jackson said when I emerged from our bedroom in my new suit tailored perfectly in a deep blue that apparently brought out my eyes. "You say that every day," I teased, "because it's true every day." He adjusted his own tie, looking devastating in classic black. "Ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." I took a deep breath. What if people judge? What if they think I'm just with you for money or status, or let them think whatever they want? He pulled me close, his hands settling on my waist. "I know the truth. You know the truth. That's all that matters." The gala was even more elaborate than the one where we'd met. I felt different walking in, confident, valued, wanted. Jackson's hand never left the small of my back, a constant reassuring presence. We mingled, talked business, laughed with clients. Several people mentioned how different I seemed from when they'd last seen me with Colton. "Happier," one woman said. "Like someone turned on a light inside you." I couldn't argue with that assessment. Around midnight, as the crowd began thinning, I saw him across the room. Colton, looking rumpled and tired in a suit that didn't fit quite right. He was alone, no Lara in sight. When our eyes met, he hesitated, then started walking over. "This should be interesting," Jackson murmured beside me. "Be nice," I whispered back. "I'm always nice." His smile was all teeth. Colton stopped a respectful distance away. "Leo, Jackson." He nodded to both of us. "Congratulations on the business, Leo. I heard it's doing well." "It is. Thank you." An awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, Colton spoke again. "I wanted to say I'm glad you're happy. Genuinely, you deserve it." I studied him, looking for sarcasm or hidden meaning, but found only sincerity. "I hope you find happiness too, Colton." He gave a sad smile. "Working on it. Lara and I didn't work out. In case you were wondering, turns out when a relationship starts with cheating, trust is pretty hard to build." "Shocking," Jackson said dryly, and I elbowed him lightly. "I should go," Colton said. "I just wanted to clear the air." "No hard feelings, no hard feelings." I agreed. We watched him leave, his shoulders slightly hunched, looking older than his 32 years. "Do you feel anything?" Jackson asked quietly. Seeing him like that, pity, maybe, but also gratitude. I turned to face Jackson fully, because if he hadn't been who he was, I might never have found you. "Fate working in mysterious ways?" Jackson's tone was teasing, but his eyes were serious, something like that. The ride home was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. Back at the penthouse, we changed out of our formal wear and ended up on the couch, my head on Jackson's shoulder, his arm around me. "Can I tell you something?" I said into the comfortable silence. "Anything. I love you." The words came out naturally, easily, because they were true. "I know it's only been 4 months, and maybe it's too soon, but I love you." I felt Jackson's breath catch, felt his arm tighten around me. When I looked up, his gray eyes were suspiciously bright. "I've loved you since that first night," he said, roughly. "When you stood in that corner looking so lost, I knew. I knew you were going to change my life." "Did I?" I asked softly. "Change your life?" "You made me understand what living actually means." He shifted so we were facing each other. "Before you, I was just existing. Building, achieving, winning. But I wasn't alive. Not really. You taught me that being soft isn't weakness. It's courage. That being gentle in a harsh world is the bravest thing you can do. Tears pricked my eyes. Colton used to say I was too soft. Colton was an idiot. Jackson brushed away a tear that had escaped. Your softness is your superpower, Leo. It's what makes you extraordinary. I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into it. Gratitude, love, hope, joy. He kissed me back with equal intensity, and when we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. Thank you, I whispered. For what? For seeing me. Really seeing me. For making me believe I was worth being seen. Always, Jackson promised. For as long as you'll have me, I'll see you. I'll value you. I'll love you. That's a pretty long commitment, I teased, trying to lighten the emotional weight of the moment. Good thing I'm in this for the long haul then. He pulled me back against him, settling us both comfortably. What do you say to making this official? Moving from living together to something permanent? My heart skipped. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Not yet. His smile was soft. When I propose, it'll be perfect, planned, special. This is just me checking if you'd be open to that future. I'm open to any future that has you in it, I said honestly. We sat there in the quiet of our home, watching the city lights through the windows, and I marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. 4 months ago, I'd been trapped in a relationship that was slowly killing who I was. Now, I was living authentically, building a business I was passionate about, loved by someone who celebrated every part of me. Hey Leo? Jackson's voice was drowsy. Yeah? I'm really glad you spilled that coffee on yourself at the cafe. Made you more approachable, I laughed, swatting his chest playfully. I was a nervous wreck. You were perfect. He kissed the top of my head. You are perfect, and wrapped in his arms, feeling more myself than I'd ever been. I finally believed him. Being soft wasn't a weakness. It was my strength. It was who I was meant to be, and I'd found someone who loved me for it.